This gate code was meant to protect my home, not turn it into a public sidewalk. I'd installed it myself, paid for the custom keypad, set it to a private code that only a few trusted neighbors had. My property, my rules, my peace of mind. But apparently, that wasn't enough for Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA. She decided, on her own, that her convenience mattered more than my privacy. Started giving out the code to delivery drivers, lawn crews, even real estate agents who didn't live on our street. No heads up, no apology, just strangers pulling up to my gate like they own the place. But I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I waited, watched, documented, and when I had enough, I changed the code, not to something random, not to something petty. I changed it to Karen's phone number, and then I put a sign on the gate. Need access? Call the HOA president directly. Let's just say, her phone hasn't stopped ringing since that. If an HOA can share your private security code without asking, what else are they giving away? Your mailbox combination? Your alarm system settings? The key into your doormat? It starts with one harmless convenience and turns into a full-blown violation, one they don't see coming because they've never been held accountable. Karen didn't just hand out my gate code. She handed out the right to walk onto my property, to cross my line without permission. And the worst part? She didn't think twice. No warning, no apology, just smug entitlement dressed as community oversight. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about a gate. It was about boundaries, about privacy, about trust. If she could do this and face no consequence, what message would that send to the rest of the board? The neighborhood? So no, I didn't just take my gate back. I made sure the next time she thinks about giving away what isn't hers, she'll remember exactly how it feels when her privacy becomes the next neighborhood shortcut. When I installed that gate, it wasn't just about property lines or aesthetics. It was about peace, the kind that comes from knowing your home is yours, your space protected, your family safe. It was a sleek black steel frame, motorized, keypad controlled. I had it set back just far enough from the road to avoid blocking traffic, but close enough to keep out the wanderers who didn't belong. I paid extra for the rolling code encryption and the built-in camera system. This wasn't overkill. This was security. After all, we had just had our first child. My wife and I were sleeping lighter. The neighborhood, while still decent, had started changing. More traffic, more foot patrols from people selling flyers, more late-night doorbell dings that went unanswered. So I did what any responsible homeowner would do. I tightened the perimeter. I shared the code with exactly 6 people. My wife, my parents, our closest 2 neighbors, and the family across the street who often watched our dog when we traveled. That was it. No one else. So you can imagine my surprise when, 3 weeks after that keypad started working, I came home to find a delivery truck halfway up the driveway. Engine idling, driver talking on a Bluetooth headset, stacking some kind of HOA-branded mulch bags on my grass. I stepped out of the truck slowly. The driver turned and smiled. "You the homeowner?" "Yes," I said. "And you are?" "Just dropping this off for Karen." "HOA mulch," she said. Said the gate would be open for me. My jaw tightened. "Karen gave you the gate code?" He shrugged. "I don't know. I just punched in the number she sent. Worked fine. Anyway, what do you want these?" I didn't answer. Just pointed to the sidewalk, trying not to show the heat rising under my collar. After he left, I checked the gate's access log. Every keypad entry left a timestamp. There it was. Entry at 12:43 p.m. External access. Not an authorized user. That was the first flag. 2 days later, I caught a stranger walking down the side of the house, holding a clipboard and a weed trimmer. No truck, no uniform, just a generic polo and scuffed boots. He nodded when he saw me. "Backyard access?" I stepped between him and the gate. "Who are you?" "True Green. Landscaping consult. Karen said you needed help with soil testing." I stared at him. I never contacted True Green. She said to check the back fence for drainage issues. "Karen gave you my gate code too?" Another shrug. I didn't ask. She just sent me the number and told me to be here by 2. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I simply pointed him back to the sidewalk and said, "Gate access is by invitation only. And this is your last." When he left, I walked straight inside, locked the gate manually, and started going through my call logs. Then I called Karen. Karen was the HOA president, elected 2 years ago. She liked to say she ran the community like a Fortune 500, but the only thing she ran like a business was her mouth. She had a clipboard in her hand more often than not, and a phone in the other. She didn't knock, she announced. She didn't ask, she decided. And for some reason, people kept letting her get away with it. When she picked up, her tone was as smug as ever. "Hello, Jacob. Everything okay?" "No," I said. "Did you give out my gate code?" Pause. "To whom?" "A delivery driver. A landscaper. God knows who else." Another pause. Then she laughed, light, breezy, fake. "Oh, that. Don't worry. It was just for minor HOA scheduling things. I knew you wouldn't mind. Saves everyone so much hassle." I kept my voice steady. "That gate is mine. On private property. That code was shared with a limited list for family security." "Well," she said, "you are part of a community, Jacob, and we're trying to make things work smoothly. I didn't think you'd be so sensitive about it." I didn't answer. I just ended the call. Then I started digging. I checked the HOA's last digital newsletter. At the bottom, in small text, was a line. "For vendor access to gated properties, contact the HOA board for entry coordination." So it was systemic. They were coordinating unauthorized entry. Worse, I found out from another neighbor that Karen had recently messaged the neighborhood WhatsApp group with the words, "Here's the gate code for deliveries. Don't lose it. 3487 hashtag will save us all some time." I wasn't in that chat. I hadn't been added. Too new, someone once told me. But my gate code was in there. My code. On a group thread with at least 40 households. That was it. I didn't scream. I didn't post a rant. I didn't even send a warning. But I did start planning. I changed the gate code that night. Not to something random. I changed it to Karen's personal cell phone number. How'd I get it? Simple. She put on every HOA notice, every printout, every email footer. Always so proud of her open-door communication style. Then I printed a new sign, laminated and hung cleanly at the keypad. Need access? Contact the HOA gate coordinator. Karen, hashtag, 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 dash hashtag, 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 hashtag. The next morning, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee and waited. It took about 45 minutes. A cleaning service SUV rolled up, punched in the old code, and frowned when the gate didn't open. Then the driver leaned out, read the sign, and pulled out her phone. I could hear Karen's phone ringing from halfway down the block. By lunch, it was ringing nonstop. That afternoon, someone called my phone. Unknown number. I picked up. "You think you're clever?" Karen snapped. "I think you gave out private information without consent," I said calmly. "And now the community's calling you for access. Problem solved. You can't do that." "Already did. You'll be hearing from a board. Looking forward to it. I have the screenshots ready." I ended the call. Then I changed my gate code again, this time to something new. But I left the sign up for another week. Because sometimes the only way to teach someone what privacy means is to let them feel what it's like to lose it. Karen didn't show up at my door. She never does confrontation in person. Instead, she sent an email. The subject line read, "Let's de-escalate this gate nonsense," slightly smiling face. There was the emoji, the digital smirk, a smile meant to disarm, to patronize, to spin the situation as harmless and me as emotional. I read the email twice. It opened with faux empathy. "Jacob, I understand you may be feeling upset, but please remember we're all neighbors here, and transparency and trust are the cornerstones of this community. Sharing your gate code was never intended to cause distress. I just thought it'd be helpful to others. Let's not blow this out of proportion." Helpful to others. Not once did she acknowledge that the code was mine or that the strangers walking up my driveway were a direct result of her decision. But I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I documented, backed up the call logs from my gate keypad, took screenshots of every visitor notification, dug into the HOA digital forum, which I wasn't officially on, but my neighbor Lucas was. He owed me one after I helped him rewire his irrigation timer last spring, and when I explained the situation, he had no hesitation. Lucas scrolled through the private WhatsApp group thread and found it within seconds. A post from Karen, dated 2 weeks prior, read, "Gate code for Jacob's house, in case delivery trucks or vendors need to get through. 3487 hashtag. Don't share outside the group, smiling face with smiling eyes. The message had 26 thumbs up emojis. He forwarded it to me. That was my proof. I printed it, along with the screen grabs, highlighted the timestamps, compiled everything into a single PDF. Then I requested a meeting with the HOA. No surprise, the next monthly board meeting was members only, and I was told that in order to address the board directly, I need to submit a request for topic inclusion form at least 10 days in advance, complete with a stated concern and recommended corrective action. Fine. I filled out the form, attached my documentation, and sent it in the same day. When I arrived at the meeting, Karen greeted me at the community center door like we were about to share lemonade on a porch. "Jacob, so glad you're here. We'll get to your items shortly." The meeting started with budget updates and a 10-minute argument about whether the new pet way stations were aesthetically cohesive. Karen ran the room like a cruise director, smiling, nodding, keeping things light. It was my turn. I stood, handed copies of the packet to each board member, and calmly walked through the timeline. My gate code, installed at my own expense. Access given only to specific individuals. Unfamiliar visitors beginning to arrive unannounced. The mulch delivery, the landscaper, the door-to-door pamphlet guy. The group message, with her name, her emoji, her code sharing. I pointed to the page. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was deliberate. You gave away access to my home without my consent. You crossed a line, not just legally, but ethically. Karen's smile didn't break. It only hardened. "Well, Jacob," she said with theatrical patience, "let's take a step back. You installed a gate that affects traffic on a shared street. That gate faces a public area, and by being part of this neighborhood, you benefit from community services. Vendors and deliveries need access, and sometimes that means sharing information. It's not personal." I took a breath. Measured. "Is that your official statement?" She nodded, still smug. "It is. And unless the gate code was designated in a private covenant, which it wasn't, we don't technically have a policy against what was done." Another board member, Bob something, added, "It's not like she gave out your social security number. This feels a bit exaggerated." I stared at him. "So gate access, code or not, is just open to anyone now." Karen laughed lightly. "Well, you changed the code already, right? So no harm done." That was the moment I knew the meeting wasn't for justice. It was for optics. The board wasn't going to discipline one of their own, not for something they didn't consider serious. So I shifted gears. "Then I'll be filing a formal complaint," I said, "through the County HOA Regulatory Oversight Division. And I'll be filing it with reference to digital privacy, abuse of positional authority, and distribution of unauthorized access credentials to private property." Karen blinked, the first crack in her armor. "I'll also be notifying my legal counsel, since I now have documented evidence that the board, as a unit, condoned this." The room got quiet, but she smiled again, leaned back, and said, "You're free to do whatever you like, Jacob. But this seems like a lot of energy over a keypad and a few bushes." I left. Didn't speak again that night. But by morning, I'd already filed a complaint. The County HOA Oversight Office sent back a polite acknowledgement. Due to backlog, response time could be up to 45 business days. They recommended mediation, but offered no guarantee of any enforcement. In other words, "We see you, but don't expect much." Meanwhile, Karen doubled down. 2 days after the meeting, a new HOA newsletter arrived. Tucked halfway down the page, under a photo of a smiling dog in a Halloween costume, was a line in bold. "Reminder: gate systems on private property are not considered protected assets under current HOA guidelines. Residents may not interfere with HOA-approved community operations, including vendor access coordination." That was her move. Codify the trespass, retroactively justify the mistake, and make sure the next person wouldn't even think to complain. And just like that, I saw the truth for what it was. This wasn't about a gate code. It was about control. Karen didn't just give out my code. She gave herself permission to bypass ownership. She saw privacy as something negotiable. She saw her position as a license to govern without limits. And now that I'd pushed back, I wasn't just a neighbor to her. I was a problem. And the only way to deal with problems? You shine a brighter light than the one they hide behind. I could have filed another complaint, could have written a dozen more emails, quoted more HOA code sections, chased another empty apology. But I'd already tried logic. I tried calm. I tried every reasonable step a person's supposed to take when dealing with people who are supposed to represent the community. And Karen? Karen laughed in my face. On paper, in public, in front of a board meeting packed with homeowners who nodded along, thinking this would just quietly go away. So I made sure it didn't. I changed the gate code, not to something random, not a string of numbers I'd forget later. I changed it to Karen's personal phone number. I didn't have to dig for it. She proudly listed it on every HOA flyer, every email header, every emergency text blast with exclamation marks and bolded words like urgent parking enforcement. She wanted to be reachable? Fine. I made sure she was. Then I printed a sign, 12 by 18 inches, weatherproof laminate, bold white letters on black background, mounted right above the keypad on the front gate. Need access? Call the HOA president directly for entry approval. Karen, 555-867-5309 I didn't hack her, didn't lie, didn't insult her. I just followed her lead, made it transparent, like she always preached. And then, I waited. It didn't take long. By the next morning, my camera feed caught the first confused visitor, a florist delivery van idling outside, phone in hand, clearly trying to figure out what to do. I watched him dial the number, watched him nod, watched his face shift from puzzled to annoyed. Then he hung up and drove away. An hour later, a local handyman truck pulled in, looked up at the sign, muttered something to his partner, and punched Karen's number into his phone like it owed him money. By noon, the real fun began. My neighbor texted me, "Dude, is Karen seriously getting all the gate calls now? LMAO. She's been pacing her yard on the phone for 30 minutes. By evening, word had started to spread. I didn't have to post anything. People talk. And by 8:47 p.m., my phone rang. Karen. I let it ring once before answering. Her voice was already on fire. Are you insane? I've had 12 people call me today, asking for mulch, pest control, access to your property. Sound familiar? I said calmly. Remember when people showed up unannounced at my gate with your permission? Guess I'm just returning the favor. You need to take that sign down right now. It's public information, Karen. You gave it to the entire neighborhood. I'm just streamlining the process. Isn't that what you wanted? This is harassment. No, I said. What you did was harassment. Giving out my private gate code. That was unauthorized access. This is called mirroring. If you're comfortable giving out my number to strangers, you must be okay with yours being public too. It's only fair. She was silent for a moment, then hissed, "You'll regret this." Not nearly as much as you regretted that group chat. Then I ended the call and saved the recording. Not for threats, there weren't any. Not for lawsuits, I didn't need one. But for the moment, just in case she tried to claim this was personal. It wasn't. It was policy, her policy. And it worked beautifully. For the next 3 days, Karen's phone did exactly what mine had done after she shared the code. It lit up with strangers. Gardeners, Amazon deliveries, carpet cleaners, window inspectors, junk haulers. All of them confused. All of them told, "Call this number if you need access." She stopped answering after day 2. By day 4, she took down the neighborhood WhatsApp post that had my code in it. Deleted it quietly. No apology, no acknowledgement. Just disappear it like it never happened. But it was too late. The screenshots had already been saved. The logs already printed. The sign at my gate? Still up. Still accurate. Still helpful. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't cursed. I hadn't knocked on doors or started a crusade. I had simply held up a mirror and let her see what it looked like when someone else decided her boundaries didn't matter. And the best part? It was all perfectly legal. No threats. No slander. Just poetic justice in 12-point font and weatherproof vinyl. Because sometimes silence isn't surrender. It's the setup for the kind of revenge you don't have to raise your voice to deliver. It only took 1 week. 1 week of nonstop calls. 1 week of strangers texting Karen at all hours. 1 week of her carefully curated HOA kingdom unraveling. Not because someone shouted or stormed the gates, but because someone quietly handed her the rope and let her tie the knot herself. The backlash came faster than I expected. The HOA's general inbox was flooded with resident emails, half complaining about the gate chaos, the other half questioning how a personal phone number ended up on a sign. Karen tried spinning it, saying the gate signage incident was an act of retaliation. She called it malicious behavior designed to humiliate leadership. But residents weren't buying it anymore. Because here's the thing about power built on fake authority. It crumbles the moment people stop nodding. And this time they stopped. So the board called an emergency HOA meeting. Karen tried to frame it as a general security discussion, a chance to reaffirm access policies and reestablish communication trust. But I knew what it really was. It was a reckoning. I arrived early. Tucked under my arm was a binder. Thick, heavy, pages printed with timestamps, screenshots, policy excerpts, quotes, and phone logs. On the front cover, just one word in bold black text. Evidence. By the time the meeting started, nearly every seat was filled. I saw familiar faces, neighbors who used to wave politely and keep walking. Now, but they looked at me with something else. Curiosity, maybe respect, maybe just relief that someone had finally said what they couldn't. Karen stood at the front of the room, trying to act like she was still in control. Hair pulled tight, matching blazer and clipboard, her trademark props. She tapped the mic and smiled. Thank you all for coming. Let's get started with our primary agenda: property access concerns and recent events involving private security systems. I waited. She talked for another 5 minutes, dancing around specifics, sprinkling in buzzwords like community transparency, digital etiquette, and protective clarity. Finally, she paused. Before we open the floor, I believe Mr. Whitmore has requested time to speak. You have 5 minutes. I stood slowly, walked to the front. No smile. I didn't need one. I set the binder down on the table beside her and clicked the remote for the projector screen. The first slide appeared. Slide 1. Gate code leak. Timeline of incidents. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't look at Karen. I looked at them, the people who mattered. On August 5th, I installed a private gate at my property. I shared the code with 6 people, all family or direct neighbors. No vendors. No general access. Slide 2. Delivery truck photo. Time-stamped. Slide 3. WhatsApp group screenshot. Karen's post sharing my code. 26 reactions. Slide 4. Landscaper testimonial. I was told to enter using this code by the HOA president. Each slide came with silence. The heavy kind. Then the big one. Slide 5. Side-by-side screenshots. Left. Karen's email calling my gate, not covered under policy. Right. HOA charter. Clause on private property rights and digital privacy. I turned back to the crowd. Karen didn't just share my gate code. She shared it in a public group message with no consent. When confronted, she denied wrongdoing. When pressured, she tried to rewrite the rules. And when I responded legally, by using her own public contact info in the exact way she used mine, she called it harassment. I paused. That's not leadership. That's manipulation. Murmurs broke out. Heads nodded. One woman near the front actually whispered, "Finally." Then I held up the binder. Every printed page in here is logged, time-stamped, and notarized. Every photo, every text message, every screenshot. No edits. No exaggerations. Karen tried to interrupt. I think that's enough of. I turned to her. Not angry. Just firm. I've waited weeks for this moment, Karen. You had your time. This is mine. She froze. That's when others started standing. One neighbor, an older man in the back, cleared his throat and said, "Karen once gave my garage code to a roofing inspector without asking. Said it was for my convenience." Another woman followed. She let a delivery crew into my yard to drop pool tiles. Tiles I hadn't even ordered. Said I probably forgot. A third. I asked her not to enter my side yard without notice. She did it anyway. Said I was overreacting. Sound familiar? More voices. Louder now. She threatened to fine us for our garden flag. She forwarded our home security footage to a vendor. She told my babysitter the passcode was standard. The room was turning. And fast. I faced the board. I'm not asking for a fight. I'm asking for accountability. For clear privacy standards. For basic respect, I turned back to the audience. And for someone who gave out private information, mocked residents, and used her position like a weapon to be removed from it permanently. Silence again. Then a slow clap. It started in the back. Then a second. Then three. Applause. Not thunderous, but honest. Karen stepped back from the podium. The board huddled, whispering, frowning. After a moment, one of them, Linda, a quiet but firm member who'd often been overshadowed, took the mic. After reviewing the evidence presented and hearing resident testimony, the board is moving forward with a disciplinary vote. She looked at Karen. Effective immediately, you are relieved of your duties as HOA president. You may remain a homeowner, but you may not serve in any leadership role for the remainder of the year, pending policy review. Karen's mouth opened, then closed. She picked up her clipboard and walked out without a word. The room didn't cheer. It didn't need to. It simply exhaled. In the weeks that followed, the board rewrote its bylaws. I helped, not as a leader, but as a resource, a voice, someone who'd been on the other end of silence and decided to make some noise. The new policies were clear. No distribution of private access codes without written consent. All vendor access requests require homeowner confirmation. Any violation of digital privacy will result in immediate disciplinary review. They called it the Whitmore Amendment. I didn't ask them to. They just did. Karen? She kept a low profile, took down her political yard signs, stopped her safety patrol walks. Last I heard, she was working on her garden, finally quiet, finally small. The gate? Still locked. Still mine. But now, when someone needs access, they don't call Karen. They knock. It is amazing how quickly a neighborhood can shift when fear stops running the show. After Karen stepped down, things didn't collapse. They clarified. Meetings became shorter, calmer, and more productive. The energy in the room changed. People started actually listening instead of waiting for the next policy hammer to drop. But the best part? We got to build something better, not just tear something down. 2 weeks after the vote, I was asked to join the HOA's newly formed Digital Security and Access Committee. The goal was clear: prevent anything like the gate code incident from happening again. I said yes, not for power, not for payback, but because I finally saw an opening to do what Karen never could, actually serve the people living here. We worked fast. With a few other volunteers, a software engineer from 3 blocks down, a former city planner, and even Lucas, the neighbor who'd first shown me the infamous group chat, we outlined a plan for a new community gate protocol. Gone were shared text chains and Karen's Wild West information drops. Instead, we introduced a digital access platform that logged every code issued, tied it to a name, time-stamped each use, and made it revocable with one click. Each homeowner controlled their own settings, who got in, when, and how long they stayed active. Vendors now submitted requests through a central portal, and unless a homeowner approved them, the gates simply stayed shut. Simple, secure, respectful, exactly what it always should have been. And once that system went live, something else changed, something harder to measure, but easy to feel. People waved longer when they passed. Some stopped to chat. Others who had once quietly tolerated the HOA's overreach now asked questions, offered input, even joined subcommittees to help draft clearer policies on everything from landscaping to surveillance. It was like the community had been waiting for a permission slip to start acting like a community again. Even Karen seemed to get the message. She still lived here, of course, same brick house, same flower beds, still perfectly manicured. But now, she walked her dog with her head down, her clipboard gone. She didn't correct people on trash bin placement or parking angles anymore. She didn't linger near the mailboxes, looking for someone to confront. She just existed, like the rest of us. And honestly, that was enough. The gate code sign, the one that bore her phone number for all the world to see, stayed up for exactly 7 days after the meeting. Long enough to prove a point. Long enough to make a memory. Then one morning, I took it down myself. Quietly. No fanfare. Folded it neatly and stored it in the same file cabinet where I'd kept the HOA letters, the screenshots, the receipts. Just in case. But I knew I wouldn't need it again. The message had been delivered. The code had been changed, not just digitally, but in how people treated one another. We'd all reset our boundaries. And this time, everyone understood the rules. Because the real victory wasn't the resignation or the bylaw amendments or even the tech upgrade. The real victory was what happened after. It was the neighbor who brought me banana bread and said, "Thanks for standing up." It was the new mom down the street who asked if she could test the baby monitor app on the new gate system, and then cried when it worked. It was the quiet knock on my door from the man 2 houses over, who once kept to himself, now asking, "How do I get involved?" For the first time in a long time, we weren't just sharing property lines. We were building something together. And this time, it wasn't built on fear. It was built on trust that if someone hands out your privacy like it's theirs to give, remind them, exposure cuts both ways. Silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's just a pause before a perfect response. I could have shouted, could have slammed doors, posted angry rants, or tried to humiliate her publicly. But that's not how change happens, not the kind that lasts. Instead, I let her speak first. I let her reveal exactly how she thought power worked. And when the time was right, I responded, not with vengeance, but with clarity. See, people like Karen count on you staying quiet. They count on fatigue, on fear, on you shrugging and saying, "It's not worth it." But when you draw a clean, unshakable line and stand on the side of principle, backed by facts, by respect, by community, that's when their version of power begins to collapse. Privacy isn't petty. Boundaries aren't negotiable. And if someone decides yours don't matter, make sure they learn, not with rage, but with results. Because the best kind of justice doesn't always make noise. Sometimes it just opens a gate and lets the truth walk in.